Time with Aunt Cheri video. Now recently I posted a video of the gifts that I made for my nieces and nephews, and today I'm going to show you how simple they are and so that anybody can make them. Even if you're little, you can make them. You'll just need a little bit of help from your mom. So the first thing that I have here is I have a little tiny composition book. Now you can buy these at Walmart for about $2 or $3. They're very inexpensive, and so that's why they make a great little gift. And if you are a kiddo and you are making this at home, you probably don't have a paper cutter quite like mine, so I'm going to show you how to do it without a paper cutter. So what you're going to want, you can do it two different ways. You can either take a ruler and measure and then make a mark on a paper, and that's one way that you could do it. But the other thing that you could do is you could turn your paper upside down and put your book on top of the paper and draw around the book. Now, how I'm going to do that is I'm going to line it up on the edge, just like that, on two sides, so that way I only have to draw two lines. So then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to draw a line across the top. I'm going to draw a line across the side. Make sure I have a good line, and then I'm going to be ready to cut. So you can't really see that line very much on the paper, but it's there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scissors and I'm going to cut across the line. So I'm just going to go up the line just like that and across the line here. Now the next thing is, even though you use the book as a guide, that's a little bit bigger than what you want to make it, because you don't want it to go all the way to the edge. Well, with these little books, it would probably be okay. So I think we'll just leave it just like that. But when you're doing the inside of your pages, you definitely don't want it to go all the way to the edge. So what you're going to want to do, if I was using this for an inside page, I would then take my ruler or my book or something, and I would cut off a little bit of it, because if it goes all the way to the edge, it will break your book on the side. On the top and bottom, you want it to go all the way to the edge, but not on the side. So see, I just put that line that's just cutting it off just a little bit, and then I will cut it just like that. Put my paper aside. Now when I put that on the inside of the book, I want to put it on the edges, on the top and the bottom, and on the side. But when I open it up, you'll see that it doesn't go all the way to the middle, and that way it won't break. Now, if you remember the one that I showed that I made for Jackson, let me get it, I have it here still, but I had made these little tabs on it. These are special tabs that you could make. You could even cut something like that out of paper. And how you would do that is maybe you would just take a ruler. Again, decide how big you want your tab, but know that you're going to want to make it twice as wide as you want it to be. But you could use your tab just, let's say we want it to be an inch. So I would make a line here at an inch. And then say I want it, that would make it an inch wide. Now let's say we need, well, this one you see about 1/4 of an inch going, so we're going to go down a whole inch this way, and we're going to draw across. So now I'll join my lines together and go across. Make sure I have a good line here, and cut that in half, just like that. And then what you would do is you would fold it in half. And then you can take something like your ruler and smash it down. And then all you have to do is glue one side on one piece of paper and another side on another piece of paper, and you have a tab. So very simple to do. Now for this book, I'm going to show you a different way. That's how you do it if you're putting paper on it. And I am going to want to put paper on the inside. So I've cut some paper here, made it a little bit smaller, and actually, let's see, there it is. We want to use this one. Now you could use your glue that you have. I'm going to use something different, but if you have school glue, you could use that. I'm going to use this little tape that I have, just to make it go a little bit faster. But if you're using glue on it, be very, very careful that you don't leave any bubbles on the paper, because the glue will help it stick really, really well. So that's a good idea, but you don't want bubbles to form on your paper. So you're going to put it on your book, and then you're going to smash it down. And if you're using glue, you're going to smash it down really well, just like that, because you don't want any bubbles into there. So you want to roll it out and smash it down. So you see, if you put it on the inside of the book like that, that makes the inside look pretty, not just the outside. So I'm going to do that to the front and to the back. Whoops, did it upside down. Just like that. Now this book, I'm not going to do it like I did the Christmas books. I'm not going to put paper on the inside pages, on these pages. And I'm not going to put tabs, because I'm not making a Christmas secret book. I'm just making a book that if somebody wanted to carry it, like if your mom wanted to carry it in her purse or something, she could, just to write little lists on it. Or maybe your dad could carry it, so make it something that they would like. Now, this one, like I said, is going to be different because I'm not going to use paper on the outside. You've already seen how to do that. If you put paper on the outside, you would do just like the other one. You would glue it down. This one's not quite big enough, but you would glue it down and then make sure there were no bubbles in it. But I wanted to do something a little bit different so you could see a different thing that you could do with it. Now, I don't want to get to make a mess on my table, and you don't want to make a mess on your table either. So have Mom put paper or something on your table for this. And then I have some white paint. I'm going to shake it up because it's paint I haven't used in a really long time, if I've ever used it. But I'm going to put that in here. Now, you could use a paper plate for your paint. You don't have to have a plastic thing like this. You just need something to put the paint in. And you probably should put a shirt over your clothes so that you don't get full of paper or paint all over your good clothes. That will not make your mom happy. Now, this is going to take a lot of coats, or at least a few, because as you can see, I've got white paint going over a really dark background, so it's going to take a lot of coats, and you have to let it completely dry between each coat. So you want to do that on the front, and when it's all dry, you want to turn it over and do it on the back, and when that's all dry, you want to turn it back and forth until you get it covered as best as you can, because we want to cover up most of that. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly covered because we're going to do something else with it too. So I'm going to pause the video and get this all painted up, and when we come back, it will be all painted and dry and ready to go. Hey guys, I am back and my book is all painted. Now, if you've already cleaned off your paintbrush after painting your book in whatever color you chose, that's great, because you can use these same paintbrushes. Now, ideally you would have painted your book and let it dry overnight and cleaned your brush right after it, because even though these are really thin and kind of flimsy paintbrushes, you can still keep painting with them for quite a while before they'll run out. Now, the next step is going to be making our book all pretty. Now, if you look closely, you can still see some of the composition book writing coming through, and I'm okay with that because I know that I'm going to cover it with my napkin. However, I did quite a few coats on this book. I think I ended up doing maybe 5 coats on this book. And so you might want to choose a color different than white. I just wanted white for my napkin that I chose, but you could use another color if you wanted to. So this is the napkin that I chose to do my book in. Now, the first thing that you're going to do, and this is a little bit tricky, you may need your mom's help a little bit, but there are usually 2 layers in a napkin. And if you go to one of the edges, you can usually figure out and start to separate those layers. Maybe you have to rip it a little bit like I just did, and then that'll leave a rough edge, and then you can separate it. So once you find a way to separate it, you want to separate it just like that, and the piece that's on the bottom that's all one color, you want to just throw away. It's very important that you make sure that your book is separated. I mean, your napkin is separated. Otherwise, it won't stick correctly and you'll kind of have a bit of a mess. So now the next thing that you want to do is you can take this and you can just kind of tear it with your fingers. You want to make sure that you have plenty of room for your book, but you don't need all of that extra napkin. Again, it doesn't have to be straight. You're just tearing it just like that, and so that you can work with it. I'm actually now going to close my book, even though it's been sitting there open all night. I'm going to close it like that, and then I'm going to also tear my napkin in half. Now, I'm just going to do this all in one layer because I think it would look funny with multiple layers. But if you wanted to do this with like just a plain red napkin and a plain green napkin, you could cut little chunks and do just tear a little bit, put some glue down and put a piece down, then put a red chunk and then another green chunk, chunk, and just do that all over the top. But I'm going to just use one solid piece. So now's the time for you to get out. If you have this, if you have drippy glue, as long as it's like Elmer's glue that's white, drippy glue will work. I'm using this product called Mod Podge, but again, if you have white plain Elmer's glue, it will work. And don't worry, it's going to look a little bit strange going on, but it will be just fine. So what you're going to want to do is you want to take your same paintbrush and you want to paint the whole cover, making sure you use plenty of glue to paint that whole cover of your book, right over the top of everything that you've painted. Now it's really hard to see mine since I used white, but if you had used a red paint or green paint or blue paint or purple paint, then you would really be able to see that white coat going over the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my napkin and lay it over the top like that, and I'm going to pat it down and just kind of let it sit there. If you get a little wrinkle in it, that's okay. Sometimes when I've made things like this, I've actually taken the napkin and I've gone like this with my hands and made it all wrinkly because that gives it kind of a fun texture too. But this time I didn't do that with the front. So I'm going to lay that down and I'm just going to let that sit there and dry. Now, every once in a while in there I see that there's a bubble. You don't want bubbles. So if you have a bubble in there, you want to push that down with your fingers. Now, what if the napkin tears? If it tears just a little bit, that's just fine. It won't hurt anything with the tear because the next step, the final step that we're going to do on the cover, it'll kind of hide that tear a little bit. If it's a big tear, then you may want to get a new napkin and pull the old one off. Now, I know you can still see that under there a little bit. If I wanted to, what I could do, and actually what I think I will do, is go ahead and put a second layer over the top. But before I do that, I'm going to have to let this first layer dry a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over while the first side's drying. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the back. Now, you notice I've got a mess with all of that overhang from the napkin. That's okay. It doesn't bother me at all because we'll take care of that later. But you want it to dry before you take care of it. The other thing is, when you're painting your book with the glue, you want to be sure that you get plenty of glue on the edges. You don't want it to make a mess on the side and glue the pages shut, but you want to go just as close to the edge as you can so that you don't, it doesn't come up from the end. So now I'm going to take this piece, and this piece was a little bit bigger. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just pat it gently down because I don't want it to tear, but I'm just going to pat it gently down just like that. Okay? And I'm going to make sure that I touch all the edges too to make sure it's flat on all of the edges. And then this is where, I don't know how well you can see it with the camera, but where those wrinkles were, you can kind of see those wrinkles in there, just like that. And then what I'm going to do while that's drying, and you can feel that it's a little bit wet in the book, and that's okay. Even though you can feel it, you're probably going to be okay. But I'm going to do the exact same thing on the spine with this. Because it's super thin, you can get away with it. Now, if you were doing paper, I don't think you would want to put the paper around. I think you would just want to leave it blank. And then And I'll show you what to do with that on one that you're using paper on. So again, this is just kind of leaned over now. I didn't get enough glue on this very end. Now, the next step, say you have quite a bit of glue. See how I have quite a bit of glue left on mine? That's okay. We don't want it to go to waste. And so what I would have you do is have your mom come over and put a piece of plastic wrap over your plate so the glue doesn't dry out, because we're not done using it yet either. Okay, so we're just going to let that sit there and let it get really dry. You want it to be completely dry before you do any more steps, otherwise you're going to make a bit of a mess. When I look at this, I'm okay with the way the back looks because there's no writing or anything coming through, but I really don't like the way the front looks. So what I will do is when it's all dry, I will go back and I'll put another layer over it. Now, yes, you'll see some of these bulbs coming through, but that'll be okay. But that way I won't be able to see that little box that you see coming through. So while that's drying, then I'm just going to move that aside like that, and I am going to show you what to do if you chose to use paper to finish it off. Now, if you chose to use paper, your job, or you are getting close to being done with this. So this one, I have my pieces of paper on the inside, just like that. I have my piece of paper on the outside and my piece of paper here. And then I have this stuff, and it's called washi tape. Now, if you don't have it, you could just leave it like that and you would be good. But if you have a piece of washi tape like this, you can do what I'm going to do. And I am just going to take a piece of that washi tape. I'm going to cut it off. This is super thin tape, and that's perfect for this project. So I've cut off my washi tape, and I am going to just go over the edge and kind of hide it. I'm going to flatten it down, make sure it's really down. Now, the problem with washi tape is that it doesn't stick very well. I mean, it sticks fine, but it's not going to stay for a long time. So I'm going to show you what to do about that. But now I'm coming back over the edge because I want it to hide the edge too. Once I know that it's all down really nice and straight, I will grab my scissors and cut off the extra, just like that. Okay? So I'm going to go back over and make sure it's just as flat as I can get it. If you hear that noise back there, it's my cat Hobbs playing in the blinds in the window. It's not supposed to be doing that. Okay, so now I'm going to do the exact same thing, only from the back to the front, and going over so that they meet in the middle. I've got to find my edge here. There we go. There's my tape. Again, I would rather cut it a little bit too long and waste a little bit than not have enough, because you can't really fix it if you don't have enough without starting over. So again, we're starting in the back, across the seam, and then we fold it over the spine. Now this is just not quite wide enough to meet. Sometimes if you're using a little bit wider washi tape like this one, that would have been enough and you would have just folded one layer over the top of the other. But with this one, it's not quite meeting here in the middle, so that's okay, we can fix that too. So again, I'm just going to cut that off like that, cut it off here, and then we're going to do it one more time. Cut off a piece, only this time what we're going to do is we're going to go kind of backwards of what we've been doing. This time we're going to do the spine. So we're going to put this row there, trying to get it just as straight as you can, but remember, it's not about being perfect, it's just about doing your very best. So we're going to put that down, and then we're going to fold it on the front and the back, and so that covers that all up. Make sure it's really smooth, and then I'm going to cut off the extra just like that. So I've got all these little pieces. Don't leave them on your table. You need to clean up after yourself, but clean them all up, and then your spine is just about done. There's only one more step. Now I see that I didn't cut that very straight, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to clean that up just a little bit. Get rid of those extra little rough edges there. Cut. So now we're all done with that part. So I'm going to set my washi tape aside. And I have another little surface to work on. Now this one's a little bit different because you're going to go over the top of your paper. Now remember, it's going to look white when it goes on, but when it dries, it's going to be all nice and clear. You won't even be, you'll be able to see that there's something there because it'll be a little bit different, but it won't be white. Okay, so I've got that all down, and then I'm going to pull my plate of glue over here, and I'm going to start by just doing one side. So I'm just going to go just over the tape. See how that's all kind of white showing up there? Don't worry. It'll be fine, but I'm just going over the tape and just going over the spine. I don't want to get it on the back because if I do, it'll stick to my table. So or to my, if you're using paper on your table, it'll definitely stick to that. On this, it won't stick so much. It'll just stick a little bit and it'll come off. But if you are doing that on a table, then it will definitely stick and make a mess, and you'll rip the paper that you're working on. It'll hook up to your book. So that's going to dry, and then when it's all done, I'll turn it over and I'll just do the back side just like that. And what that does is that kind of seals it in. So whoops, I don't realize I had that much on there. So when you do that, you don't want to go just over the tape. You want to go over your line just a little bit, getting into your paper. You see, like I did, so that it seals it to the bottom, because sealing it to the tape itself won't do any good. You've got to be able to hook it over to the bottom. Now, if you wanted to, I'll show you what else you could do. You could go over the whole thing, and then what will happen is it will help protect it a little bit, but it'll also put like a shiny little coat on it. Again, that looks awful, doesn't it? But when we come back, you'll see, I'll show it to you at the very end of the video, and you'll see that it's all clear and it won't look awful anymore. And then that way, it's making that even stronger so that that tape will stick to that and it'll be less likely to come up. Okay? So when we come back, I will have the extra, my book should be all dry, this one and the other one, and I'll show you how to finish up the napkin one, and I'll show you what this one looks like all done. So come back soon. Okay, so we're back and mine is all nice and dry. Hopefully yours is nice and dry as well. And you see the couple different layers that I put on there. And it actually is really hard to see the lines coming through since I put the two different layers. And now I have Christmas lights going every which way. So the next step that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get rid of this extra flappy stuff. Now I start that by just simply tearing off most of it the best that I can, because that is the easiest way, and it will leave a little bit of a rough edge. So if you want to, you can take your scissors and open up the book and go back and trim off that extra. Now some of you may like that little rough edge, and that's okay too. There's different ways. Those scissors are very good. Let's try these scissors. There we go. There's different ways that you can do it, and so, for some people those little frayed edges are really super fun, and other people don't like them that way. So there we have that, almost completely done, and we are just about to finish our book. So I'm going to do the same off the back. I had already started tearing, and so it's just a little bit. I find that it's, like I said, easier to tear off the first part and then just trim up the back part. So there, that's all done. So now there's one final step, well maybe two, and your book's all done. So I'm going to get out my thing here, and it's got my glue in there. Remember, I suggested that you have your mom wrap it in plastic. So now I'm going to just go over the top of everything with another coat. Now before, there's Hobbs again making that noise. Now before the video came on, I already did this to the back. So my back and my The back part of mine is completely done. The reason you're going over this final coat is that glue will seep into the napkin and really make it so makes a nice hard covering, not hard, but a nice really it's a covering that will really stay in place for you so that it shouldn't come off. So that is what it looks like. Now this has to dry. The back side is already done, which you can see if I turn it over very carefully. And you can see a little bit of the stuff coming through in the bottom, but it's not bad enough. I'm not too worried about it. So there is our finished book. Now I'm going to set that aside to finish drying. And I'm going to go back to the one with paper that I showed you. Now you may recall that I told you that my glue would dry clear, and for some reason, I don't know why, but on this book it did not dry clear. So you might want to test it on something a little bit because this brown color paper didn't make my particular glue dry clear. So you might want to start this on another piece to make sure that it's going to dry clear. Maybe if you have a piece of scrap paper, put your glue over the top of it and make sure that it dries clear before you do it on your book. Okay, so that is our book. You can see you can open it up. There's the front cover and the back cover. Now I don't mind those white strokes on this because it just makes it look kind of old-fashioned a little bit, so I don't mind it at all, but if you don't like that, I wouldn't put it on there. Okay, now the last thing that you need to do is you need to open up your book and be really gentle with it and kind of open up some of the pages and make sure that you didn't drip any small amounts of glue on there because you don't want your pages sticking together. So if you do have some that are stuck together, you're going to want to just gently, or maybe with your mom's help, just kind of open them back up and unstick them. If they're stuck together really hard, you probably should just leave them stuck together. So there we have our completed books, and I am so glad you joined me. Join me again soon for another fun project with Crafty Time with Aunt Cheri. Thanks, have a great day. Bye. Hi moms, welcome to the Mom's Tips section of the Crafty Time with Aunt Cheri video, where I show you exactly the supplies that you're going to need to make today's project. Now I am going to focus on doing the project one way, but I'm going to give them tips on how to do it the other way as well, just so that there's a variety of ways to do that. Now one way what the project for today is going to be decorating these little composition books. Now if you saw the 2018 newest Crafty Time with Aunt Cheri video where I introduced the books for my nephews and nieces, the secret books, I have it sitting right here. This project is very similar to that. However, we're not going as much into depth. We won't be adding dividing pages. We won't be making dividers. However, I will tell your kids how to do that. Let me just to show you what all that you really need to do is have a piece of paper to cover the inside of your front and back. If you decide that you want dividers, or they decide they want dividers, then you're going to want to cut it a little bit narrower than the paper, otherwise the binding will break. So both on any of your inside pages, you want to be sure and do that. I'm not going to get anything fancy on this particular book as far as the way that I'm going to be doing it. I'm not going to put tape or anything on the spine. However, I have another one prepped here that I kind of started, and it's going to be along the same lines as what this book is. So I will show them how I finished the binding on this, just so that you are aware how to do it in case you choose to use paper. But you see, it's really simple. Paper on the front inside, paper on the back inside, and paper on this is the back cover, this is paper on the front cover. Then I'll put some washi tape on the side, go over it with Mod Podge. So that's one way to do it. So if you choose to use, maybe you have pattern paper and scraps around, that's great. You could also maybe even cut apart brown paper bags and let them paint on it and then cut that out. That's great too. So I show them how to cut paper using a ruler. I understand that not everybody has a paper trimmer from Fiskars, and you would want to be careful with a kid, a little kiddo, using that anyway, unless you're right there with them. So you will want some pattern paper of some sort to finish off the inside of the book, or if you choose to make one like this to finish up the outside of the book. My focus, however, is going to be on using a different type of supply. So what I have here is I have some acrylic paint, and what I'm going to be doing is painting the outside cover of the book. And then I have purchased these napkins, and I just picked these up at Walmart. They were $1.47. You'll notice that the pattern on it isn't huge. You don't want a big, huge pattern because it's such a small book. You might not be able to put your pattern on that, and there would be nothing sadder than the snowman's head getting cut off or something like that. So just simple napkins like this. The paint is the base to go under it, because obviously if you put a napkin over this book, you're going to see the book right through it. So before we put the napkins on, I'm going to use paint. So that's how I'm going to use it. And then I have Mod Podge here. Now you do not have to go out. If you don't have Mod Podge around and you don't think you would use Mod Podge, don't go out and buy it. That's when you can use just plain white drippy glue. And we talked about the drippy glue, Elmer's glue, white glue. As long as it's white glue that dries clear, you can use that just like you use the Mod Podge. So again, don't feel like you have to go get Mod Podge. I'm going to tell your kids you can use your white Elmer's glue. Just make sure that it dries clear, because if it doesn't dry clear, you're going to have a mess on your hands. But this will work if it dries clear. You're going to need a sponge paintbrush, and I really don't know of an alternative to that. These are pretty cheap. I suppose if you had makeup wedges around the house, you could use something like that. I suppose you could even use fingers. I wouldn't. This really isn't a finger painting project, and it's going to make a huge mess, but these are pretty inexpensive. You don't have to have a palette like this. You can find these at Walmart or at your craft stores if you want. But a simple paper plate or some kind of disposable plate will do. You're definitely going to want your paint shirts. So that is the project and the items that you will need. And if you want to scroll through the video so that you see what I do, so that you can kind of get a better idea of which way you want to go, feel free to do that too. So I look forward to the next video, and thanks for stopping by today. And remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Have a great day. Bye.